believer. In today's video, I am doing my books to munch in July, even though it is already halfway through July and it is already more than halfway through the year 2019. Don't get me started. I don't understand where the time is going. Can somebody explain? Explain. So, as always, this month I'll be devouring 3 delicious books, and I have already devoured one, and I'm now trying to munch my way through the second one, which is really, really big. So, the first book that I read in July was Wither by Lauren DeStefano. It is about a girl called Rhine, and basically she lives in a dystopian future world where the young are dying at the age of 25 and 20. Girls die at 20, guys die at 25, and so to keep the human race going, they are then forced to wed when they are like 13 and bear children, as many as they can, and the older generation who have surpassed this, who lived on before this plague kind of came to the young, they are trying to find a cure for it. But in the meantime, people that are getting married and bearing children are not all willing participants. And in fact, it's quite common for young girls to be kidnapped when they are of childbearing age and to be taken and wed off to men who will then, you know, make them have children to continue the race. And so this follows the life of Ryan and how she is kidnapped and how she is trapped in this house in a marriage that she doesn't want to be in, and basically how of course she wants to escape, but whether or not that is going to be a possibility considering the strict restrictions that are put on the brides. They're called the brides, and you know, they have this own floor but they can't get off the floor. And it's a very, very creepy premise, and yeah, I have stuff to say about this one, but I'll talk about it more in my wrap up. The second book that I'm devouring this month is finally, at last, because as I've said, I think before, I'm going through my TBR on my list, which is just a bunch of long books. I did go shopping the other day and get 4 more books. Not that I needed them. Some of them are shorter books though, so you know, I'll probably be reading those before I read all of the ones on my list. But anyways, I've chosen another long book. So how last month I chose Tower of Dawn, which was, you know, I have now chosen Iron Gold by Pierce Brown, which is also very, very big. But I have been so excited to read this story since finishing the Red Rising trilogy because of this. This of course continues it, and it looks back at some of the old characters in the Red Rising trilogy, but also introduces a few new characters and a few different perspectives, and just shows us what's happening since the end of Morning Star. Now Morning Star ends perfectly and you can go on to imagine what's happened, but now this beauty takes place 10 years later, and yeah, you see how things are going. And what I love so far, what I've read, is that it's very believable. It's kind of exactly what you imagine, but it's nice to know that you're imagining the right thing. But there's still a lot going on, and there's still a lot of tension, and there's still a lot of things that are unresolved and that are creeping up to be more of an issue. So I of course can't tell you too much about Iron Gold without giving spoilers, so I'll just tell you a little bit about Red Rising if you have not read the Red Rising trilogy so far. It follows the life of a boy called Darrow who lives on Mars, and he is working in the mines, and it's a world where there are different rankings by different colors. Your blood is all red, it's not like Red Queen, but there are different ranks of colors. So there are golds who are the super top superior powerful ones, and there are reds and there are pinks and there are browns and there are greens and yellows and all that stuff, and everyone has a different station where they belong. And basically it's called Red Rising because Darrow is a red, and through a series of very traumatic events, it leads to him getting a little bit angry with the way that the system, the ranking system is done, and he wants to, you know, rise against his oppressors, and he then goes on to do great and terrible things. And it's the Red Rising, it's the rising of the Reds, but of course all other colors are swept up in this big great anarchy madness, and then the series continues. There's a bunch of amazing characters. They're very believable, very lifelike, and especially if you like sci-fi, which by the way, I'm definitely more of a fantasy girl than sci-fi, but something about this book just sounded really interesting, and I read it and absolutely loved it, and it's so nice being like Mars and Venus and space and Luna and blah blah blah. It's really, really great. So I highly recommend the Red Rising trilogy if you have not read it. And then of course Iron Gold. I thought it was a spin-off, but it's more the same series, just takes place 10 years later, so it's really, really exciting. My arm is actually hurting from holding that book up for so long. And the third and final book that I am going to read this month, or at least I'm hoping to read this month, because yes, you know me, you know my reading speed, and Iron Gold is a bit of a beast, but I'm hoping, I'm positive that I should be able to finish this one, or at least get halfway through it, which is kind of good. But yes, the third book that I am reading this month is my indie pick of the month. So anyways, to my indie pick of the month. It is by an author that is new to me to read, but not an author that is new to me to know about. I have even worked with this author on box sets and on advertising and stuff like that, and we've, you know, chatted a few times, and I've seen a lot of her books around. They are very, very successful, and I've always been intrigued, and I have so many of them on my Kindle because, again, Kindle TBR is very different to shelf TBR. I don't know how many books I really have to read, but anyways, this is one from the Kindle, and it is one from an author that I wanted to read for such a long time, but again, just finding the time was a bit crazy. So finally, I'm so excited to be reading a book by Rebecca Hamilton and Isadora Brown. Isadora Brown is not an author I'm familiar with, but it's a collaboration with Rebecca, and I know that Rebecca does a lot of awesome, great collaborations, and this one is called Sea of Darkness, The Vampire Saga, Book 1. So first of all, I love vampires, and it's been a while actually since I've read a really good vampire read. I mean, every time I think of a vampire read, I think of Twilight, which of course, you know, eons old. I'm sure I've read a vampire book since then. Not including, of course, The Mortal Instruments, which has, you know, the token ones. I think I've read a vampire book since then. I'm sure I have. But anyways, I'm looking forward to diving into this one. I mean, it's vampires and it's pirates, which are two of my favorite things. Sea of Darkness follows the life of a girl called Kelia who lives in a world of course, vampires and sea shadows. And sea shadows are the supposed enemy. However, one night Kelia's father is murdered, but the society that she works for, because she is the slayer of sea shadows, and the society that she works for is trying to tell her that her father committed suicide, but this is of course something that Kelia does not believe and will not support. And so she goes off and forms an ally with a sea shadow, and I'm told he's gorgeous. And he unwittingly tells her a bit more about her life, where she's come from, the world that they live in, and shows her that perhaps the enemy is not who she originally thought. However, when her connection to this sea shadow called Drew Knight, which is just a beautiful name, when her connection to Drew Knight is like discovered by the society, she is then forced to choose between a life that she has always known, but that might be a lie, and the new dark and terrifying truth that she is not necessarily ready to face, and that could lead to a whole bunch of other issues and possibly be the reason her father was killed. And that is all for the books I plan to munch this month of July. Have you read any of these books? Do you intend to read any of these books? And what were your thoughts on these books? Of course, without spoilers. Please leave a comment below, send me a message, whichever way you prefer to get in touch with me. I am of course available on Instagram, on Twitter, on Facebook, and of course my website, and by email and through my newsletter. If you're not subscribed, I will link it below. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed this video, then please consider giving it a thumbs up, and if you like all my other videos, then please subscribe. And until next time, I'll see you. Bye!